Good morning. So I'm Alec, CEO of Settle. Settle is a best-in-class cash flow management tool for brands and omni-channel brands, combining bill pay and purchase order automation with built-in working capital. So we're very fortunate to work with some incredible brands like Pattern and Flakes. So perhaps we could start there. Suze, Jason, maybe tell us a little about yourselves and your companies.
Okay. Hey, everyone. I'm Suze. I'm the co-founder of Pattern. So we are very similar in some ways to what Ben was saying in that we're a family of brands. We have 7 brands in the portfolio today, all based on Shopify, but then scaling omni-channel. Our brands are a combination of incubated brands and also acquired brands. But for us, we're really focused on a customer mission of helping people enjoy daily life at home. So that is really the shared thread that operates within the portfolio. So we really do go after one core common customer persona and profile across the entirety of the brand portfolio. But we operate with this one team, one cap table model. So essentially, everyone's a Pattern employee, and we work across the entirety of the 7 brands. Keeps us busy. Also, shout out to offshore resourcing. Our global team has been really an incredible way that we've scaled. And then prior to Pattern, my co-founders and I ran a brand agency here in New York called Gin Lane that worked with a lot of the early DTC millennial-based brands and had an amazing time of seeing firsthand how to scale and really grow these brands, but also had that aha moment of going, this doesn't work unless you actually have a way to do this profitably. And that was really the turning point for us that saw us close down the agency, take the team with us, and take a leap of faith with Pattern, which was about 5 years ago now.
So I'm Jason Good. I'm the founder of Flakes. I guess I'll give the story of how we started. So 2020, I started losing my hair. Didn't know if it was the stress from COVID or what was going on. Turns out it was dandruff. Teamed up with the top dermatologist in New York City to start the brand. Pulled in a couple guys from Harry's actually to do some of the branding. Took about 18 months to launch, but we came out with a more effective, better smelling solution, like a more premium version than let's say like Head and Shoulders.
Cool. Thanks for that. What kind of financing did you look into when growing the brand, and why'd you look at alternative financing?
I mean, early on, we did a small friends and family round, but when we were trying to grow the brand, the initial capital constraints to try and get inventory, which is the typical battle that you'll experience early on, right? And with Settle, if you have a healthy balance sheet, you're profitable, it allows you to get the capital you need in order to buy that inventory and do so in a very structured, intentional, responsible way to where, let's say you're making an inventory purchase, you're going to get net 30 right off the gate, and then moving forward, you have payments monthly, right? With other options, let's say an MCA or revenue-based financing, it becomes a challenge there, right? You're going to have high APRs, and also the biggest thing for us was typically all of those groups outside of Shopify Capital, which didn't have the amount of funding that we needed, they're looking for 12 months of operating history. So if you're able to illustrate a healthy balance sheet, proper P&L, you can get that financing earlier than, let's say, with those other financial instruments, right? And the other issue too that I experienced with starting this brand was early on, your MOQs for inventory, it crushes your margin. And so when we teamed up with Settle, it allowed us to bring like a healthy benefit of it was we brought down our COGS by 60% in 5 months just because we had access to capital and were able to increase our inventory purchases and those sizes or the size of those inventory purchases. So it was a huge lever for us. And without Settle, I mean, we would not be able to scale the way we have in our first year.
That's a hard act to follow. So for us, we went the traditional route originally. We are VC backed. We've raised a lot of money. We've gone to traditional, more like private debt lending, where that's how we finance our acquisitions. But for us, alternative financing was just a swifter and easier way to approach things. I think to your point, again, we're a physical product business. That is, inventory is kind of soul crushing at times when you think about having to forecast the lead times, MOQs, and just honestly the amount of cash that's like going out of your bank before you're ever going to see a return. And so that really was what led us to exploring alternative financing. We were Googling the other day, or searching, I guess I should say, in my email, and we realized that it was deep in 2020 that I first came across Settle, and that for us was actually a really pivotal moment, because before that we'd had a more traditional line of credit, which, again, I don't come from finance background, so I was like, great, cool, this makes sense. But what I didn't realize was there was actually a lot of stringent requirements about how they needed to pay the supplier directly. A lot of our suppliers are in China. One of our key suppliers at the time that we were spending a lot of money with had their primary bank in Hong Kong. They couldn't get to Hong Kong, which meant that they actually couldn't sign paperwork that was required. So it effectively rendered my very healthy bank-like revolving line of credit useless to me. And so I was literally like, oh God, what am I going to do? We paid out of our pocket for the meantime, but that wasn't sustainable, especially at the time we had our home organizing business, Open Spaces. People were stuck at home. They wanted a lot of organizing products. And so Settle really was the godsend that has also helped us to scale really flexibly and kind of nimbly, I would say.
Would you say it allows you to have like a pretty simple like financial setup within your business?
Wow, we've got the two hosts here. Yes, I would. Yeah. I would say actually for us, we went from more complex to more simple by actually pursuing alternative financing routes. Like for us, again, originally it was lines of credit, other bank like services stuff going on. And then for us these days, it's literally, yeah, we're VC backed. We have our debt that's for M&A, and then literally for our working capital, it's just using Settle as our alternative financing, and then an SVB Innovators card, because we still get a really good cash back there.
You're an SVB?
We are.
I am too still, so.
You know what, that was, I still remember the fun moments, and I think it took 10 years off my life. But we still are with SVB. Honestly, the terms are too good to make sense to leave. But we did diversify, I'd say, where like all of our cash was stored beyond just SVB. But for credit card, honestly, it's really good.
To piggyback off that, though, with the simplicity of Settle, I think something that, at least for us, maybe other brands do it differently, but something that was easy and allowed us to scale without just banging our head against the wall was we're in a business that really is simple, but there's just a ton of levers that are going on that make it feel complex. And you know, if you take 2021, it was like all gas, no brakes, money didn't matter. It was just throw gasoline on the fire. And I think if you set your financial toolbox up to where it's super simple, like we have one credit card, that's it, and that pays for our ads. And then we use Settle for inventory financing, and that's it. And if we had more things going on, I would lose my mind. The business would not be where it's at, and it would just be way too complex, take up way too much time. I'd probably try and hire someone, which would be the wrong move, whether that's fractionally or full-time. It allows you to really be methodical, and I think there are use cases for other financial tools or different tools in your financial toolbox, whether that's MCA or revenue-based financing. But for us, with inventory and the way that it's structured, it allows you to really have proper demand planning and plan and know that you have these payments coming up in a very organized manner. So yeah, I think keeping things simple for us is what really drove our business this year.
Speaking on that, how often do you guys do planning? Is that like a weekly thing? What kind of tips do you have to offer there?
So we didn't do it early enough. We were just kind of I mean, honestly, for about 4 months, I was just running the business off of triple whale and accounting for about a 5% margin of error, which was not the best way to run my business. But so I brought on a fractional CFO and through that in a very cheap way with incredibly talented people. We probably do it, I would say, like every other week.
Yeah, I mean, we're very on top of it. I think, especially running multiple brands, it feels like we have to be very regimented in some ways, but that's also a good thing, and it kind of keeps us honest. I think with all of these things, again, you need to be as detailed as you can because, again, this is something where your revenue is impacting the cash that's coming in. You've already bought your inventory, assuming your physical product business, probably months ahead of time. And so this is something where it's like long-range planning as well as really then in the moment on a weekly basis, we're sitting there. So for us, our open-to-buy process, which is like our inventory planning process, is a monthly cadence, but we're then meeting weekly to really make sure that we're still on track. And then again, for us, even from a cash flow perspective, we have our cash flow that we look at on like a weekly, sometimes daily basis, even though we're in a very healthy position, because I think knowledge is power. I always wish that someone had kind of shaken me at kind of the beginning of Pattern and said, get your finance hire in ASAP. We waited until probably longer than we should because we had enough knowledge to be dangerous, but it was something where I look back and I'm like, wow, that paid for itself 10 times over in making such smarter decisions. And so this is where I'd say if anyone takes away anything, like if you don't personally come from a finance background, really make sure, again, whether it's full-time, whether it's fractional, that is a critical resource that you have sitting at the table with you, and make that monthly FP&A process as a whole a key part of like your rituals and routines as a founder.
So yeah, real quick, I will say my background was in finance, so do not recommend what I did. But I see the key metric that we track now is contribution margin dollars, like per order. That's it. Like that's what I'm focused on, and everything else is incredibly lean. I'm the full-time guy, and we have fractional employees outside of that, and so we've been able to grow the business pretty well that way.
As you both have scaled, what's been your biggest obstacle and sense of like cash flow management?
Inventory, like hands down inventory. Again, we have, many SKUs, and so just the complexities there. And then also for us, look, we were in our DTC first, that is our core, but we're really scaling Omni, which has been a new beast to figure out. We're figuring out wholesale, and we started out in specialty and boutique, which was actually a much simpler thing to plan for because it was much more akin to D2C from a cash cycle perspective. But as we've then built some more mass wholesale relationships, that's been something where, again, it just increases like that cash to cash cycle. And so it's added additional complexity into the mix.
I would say for us, it's a combination of a few things. First, it's a credit card company that can scale with you. I don't know if anyone else has this challenge, but we have Amex, and it's incredibly difficult to get it to increase that limit each month, and then eventually they flag you, and it's problematic, and then you don't have enough of a track record to really work with some of the other cards that are out there. You don't have 12 months of operating history. It doesn't matter what your balance sheet looks like. Doesn't matter what your P&L looks like. It's a hard rule, 12 months until we can actually work with you. So that's been a challenge. Inventory for sure. It's the biggest pain in the ass for sure. So negotiating terms with suppliers has been key to cash flow for sure. Like that was a huge unlock for us, is when we got away from 50% deposit, 50% on receipt of goods, not even at 30. So now we're moving that along nicely.
I think just to build to that, though, so much of life is just about relationships, and finance is the same, where this is about find the people that you build the relationship with, get to know them, whether it's with your suppliers, you build a relationship with them so they trust you, and then you can find a win-win situation for you both where they'll actually negotiate with you because I will say so many times they were like, no, we're just not negotiating. And I'm like, I'm persistent. And then you end up kind of getting to a place where, again, you have that rapport on both sides. It's the same with our relationship with Settle. It's been a 4-year relationship. And every single time we've been like, hey, here's what's happening, here's what's coming. How do we like work through this and problem solve together? Same, honestly, with our credit card. SVB obviously has limitations, but we've gotten to go out, know our reps and account managers there. And so I think big takeaway is also just build relationships and communicate and set those expectations. Because people, again, they have their limitations of being like, we're not policy-wise allowed to do things. But ultimately, people do try to help you if you're showing that you can be kind of creditworthy, trustworthy, and that you have the ability to scale.
The best thing about Settle actually is it's rare that you get to speak with the CEO of the company that is making those decisions. So having that direct correspondence has been like a key differentiator for us.
I feel like it sounds like we were paid to be here today. We were not. We just genuinely really love Alec and the Settle team.
Appreciate that. What are you guys going to accomplish this year, 2024? What are the plans?
Don't run out of inventory.
I mean, that's a good plan. Hopefully we can make that happen. How are we going month 2 of the year? We're on track?
We'll see in April.
We did run out of inventory, actually. Fun fact for us, we oversold. We had an insane November and December, and we're like, do we just keep going? We're going to be in a really tough place in January, and we kept going. Had some really good Wirecutter articles. But for us, I think profitable growth. Like that really is, and again, to go back to Ben's points in the session earlier, for us, it's all about profitability. Nothing matters if you are not profitable. And I think it's, again, the thing that I just wish someone had really made me realize before we started Pattern. We said it before we started Pattern, where we're all about profitability. And then, at first we fell into some of the same traps and we had to be like, no, we're fixing it. So growth for existing brands, again, I'm very focused on omni-channel growth this year. And then also growth for the portfolio. So I guess just to give us a plug, if anyone has a brand that they think could be a good fit for Pattern, hit me up. We are really actively growing, and it's exciting to see as we expand rooms and categories of the home.
There's one thing too about building a business now versus like the heyday when people will talk about it in 2016, 2017, 2018, getting all the VC capital and just really scaling the business. I think there's never been a better time to build a DTC business than now, because it forces you to focus on the things that actually matter, to focus on profitability, and learn how to build a business and scale that business in a healthy way to where in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, when we get out of the lull that we're in terms of the cycle, you'll be in an incredible spot, right?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think we always say one of our values at Pattern is focus on impact. And I think that's really what we try and do. And then for a brand, it's make sure you have really strong gross margins, because nothing else honestly will work if you don't. Make sure that you have incredible products. If you're selling products, again, you're a product business. You're not just a marketing business. And so I think, again, you can get one customer to try you once, but if your product sucks, they're not coming back and you're not building that relationship. And then contribution margin and ultimately lean operations. Be scrappy.
Yeah, I kind of feel like capital efficiency is the name of the game for investors. Like if they're going to put money in, they don't want to make sure that you're going to need money, a week later or a few months later. So like how well can you stretch that capital?
Yes, and again, I really do believe, and it's easy for me to say having raised VC money, because I'm like, okay, great, I'm not on the other side, but what I will say is for every business we've acquired, they've all been bootstrapped. And it's put a lot more money in their pocket than I've ever seen from Pattern, and hopefully I will see one day, but it's a smarter way of building a business, even though I know it can be really painful in the moment.
How are we doing on time?
Just a couple questions. I'm Mark Bozek with Stage 10. We're a live streaming tech platform. Suze, how do you define omni-channel? Because it's been around for 15 years and it has evolved into, I've never believed it's a store and a website. And how do you define it?
Exactly. I mean, look, for us, I think it's how we meeting customers where they are and looking at this as simply a series of distribution channels. When we think about it for Pattern, DTC is certainly the core. We're big believers in owning the customer data. Again, that's very important to us when you think about a portfolio approach. We then are looking at wholesale opportunities and defining, obviously, the scale and spectrum there. Amazon has actually been something that, again, a few years ago, I probably would have been like, I'm not so sure that we'd be selling on Amazon. And again, we actually do look at digital marketplaces and Amazon pretty highly now, but I think of it as a ratio within the business where I'm like, okay, I don't want more than 15% of my revenue coming from this. And then we actually have a small storefront in LA for one of our brands that has been its own adventure of owned retail. But for us, I think it is that breadth and then really looking at it as this entire ecosystem and how do you make them play together. So we've had to re-examine our packaging, et cetera, to always be like, how do we try and encourage as many people, no matter where they discover us, to come back to D2C and to build that direct relationship with us, but seeing these other channels as A, a way to scale highly profitably, and B, just amazing amounts of eyeballs in such quick succession that can really provide a halo effect on the brand.
Any other questions? One more? All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.